When was the last time you dared to dream?
When was the last time you dared to dream? Like really dared to dream? The type of dream that can be so powerful, it shapes the course of your life, of everything you do. The type of dream that gets you up and moving each and every day, literally up and moving. The type of big, scary dream that summons and ignites the power of the human spirit. Yeah, that type of dream. One so audacious, you hardly dare to utter its existence. One that will not just need the power of the human spirit, but all the power of the human spirit when things get tough. Because we promise you, things will get tough. There will be times when it feels like it might never be anything but a dream. Potential. Unfulfilled. But here's the thing. There is nothing more powerful than the human spirit. Nothing. So dream on. Dream on.
Why do I start with such a clip? Because the topic I'm today talking about is a lot about dreaming, or everything started with a dream. And I think we all have to dream on the journey we are together on, right? Getting rid of fossil resources in our supply chains, reducing our carbon footprint of different kinds of industries. All this is not possible when we don't dream. But everything is connected first to the why. And we at On, who does not know us, we are a performance sports brand, and our mission is to igniting the human spirit through movement. We want to bring the fun into the run. We want to show that sports is fun, that you can do so much, and in best case, outside in the nature. And here's getting interesting. The nature, our planet, is a playground to ignite the human spirit through movement. And this is why a mission for the humans is not enough. We also need a mission for the planet. And our mission for the planet is, therefore, making performance products with the lowest possible footprint. And I mean, now this is all marketing claims, right? It is strong and bold. But of course, I want to go deeper today, because when you have a big mission, what do you need? First of all, you need goals which are measurable, of course achievable, but make also people dream. And then you need a damn good strategy to reach that. Our goal, which is measurable, is reducing our carbon footprint according to the Paris Convention, and we have committed to science-based target by 55% till 2030. This is a very, very clear goal we all are aiming for. And it's a very ambitious goal. The first thing, when you want to reach a goal in the future, you have to understand what is the status. Where do we have the biggest footprint in our company? And I have good news and bad news. The bad news first. It's unfortunately our core. The biggest carbon footprint is coming from our products. 99.3% are Scope 3 emissions and coming from the products. And now coming to the good, especially for my team, I'm working in the innovation team, in the R&D. This is exactly the area we can have impact on. So this is what we can change, the 99.3%. Let's dive into this 99.3%. Because still, we cannot focus on everything. Like, where can we have the biggest impact? And I don't want to go into details, but I want to focus on the light blue part. And these are the raw materials. So around 65% of our footprint in Scope 3 are raw materials. And this is a great news for everyone who is here at the World Biomarkets, because right here it's about how can we move away from fossil resources and going into bio-based resources, for example, to reduce our footprint. We can turn things small. We can move slowly, make showcases on products with bio-based resources. All of this is possible, but this will not have an impact. So to really change the industry, which is quite doing since 40 years the same, within only a few years to reach this minus 55% reduction, we have to be much more bold. We have to innovate on the technology side, on the materials side. We cannot only discover things and then apply it in a small scale, but the most important thing is a scale and do it fast. And a lot of people, not only within our company, for example, or outside the industry or our communities, they ask, why do we have to do it so fast? Because 2030 is still like, what, 7 years ago, right? We still have 7 years. Quickly to explain, we in the innovation team and in the R&D working now on the year 26, 27. So in product development, we only have around 3 more years to go to achieve the minus 55%. So we have to be very, very fast now. But now let's come to the strategy. We base our strategy on 3 different pillars. In general, we envision a future where all our products are circular and made out of fossil-free resources. And I always try to combine it with a small, like helping bridge how to remember that when someone wants to explain our strategy in the area of ESG and sustainability, I always say fossil-free circularity. Move away from fossil resources and become a circular company. And our 3 pillars are, we are focusing on the material side, on very clearly defined preferred materials. And this is what it is about today. Before we jump into this area, let's talk quickly about the other 2. The second is about circular products. Last year, we were on stage together with Akima, with our Cyclone program, and with our Cloud Neo. If you do not know what it is, feel free to Google it. Here we are exemplifying in the industry the very first fully circular performance running shoe. And I was part of the team who developed this innovation, and I can tell you only developing a shoe which is fully recyclable is already a big innovation step. But we realized very quickly in the company that making a product circular, designing it for circularity, manufacturing it for circularity is a small part. The big elephant in the room is how do we get the products back? How do we motivate people to send products back, to make clear, hey, this material has still a high value for us? Then where do you collect them? How do we recycle them? Do we do chemical recycling, mechanical recycling? What is happening afterwards? Open loop recycling? Do we do our own products again, or do we stream it into other industries? Do we do downcycling, which is less energy intense, or do we try to keep the value but put a lot of energy in? So the box in the middle is not a product innovation. It's a business innovation. We at On, we have built an own company inside our company to tackle and achieve that. And till 2030, we want to take back the majority of our products. And then we have the last part, often for the community, not the most exciting one, but one where you have a very high impact. Sustainable production is about which kind of energy do you use? Where can you switch to green energy? How much energy do you use? How much water do you use? What about the chemicals? All of this is in the last part, and we have our own team who are taking care about it. But today we want to focus on a very exciting topic in the material box. And to explain our material strategy in a little bit more detail, we try to replace fossil resources by, number one, recycled resources. Works very well for polyester, for example, right? On the one hand, mechanical recycled polyester from PET bottles is out there for years, and switching this is quite easy, although we think now from time to time, why there's another industry, the bottle industry, which becomes circular. Why should we break this up and making apparel out of it, which we then throw away? So a lot of our philosophy is going strongly in the direction of chemical recycling as well, making fiber to fiber. This is one part. Works for polyester. Then we have bio-based resources. For example, for our high-performance materials like polyamides, we are using castor oil, which is not competing with the food chain and has a lot of benefits. Before I'm now jumping into the last area, let's have a look at the product itself. Where do we have a pain point? So I already said polyester is not the big problem, but 50% of our shoe is made out of EVA, or in the general industry. Over 90% of all running shoes are made out of EVA, the so-called midsole, which gives you the cushioning, and which is equipped with our CloudTech technologies, which is circles under the shoe, which make us not only look different, but also feel different when you run in them. EVA stands for ethylene vinyl acetate. And the biggest problem is this material has to have a very high performance. You're landing millions of times on your shoes, right? And it has to do millions of times the same thing. So it's very, very difficult to do it out of recycled resource because they are often cross-linked and. So some chemical reasons behind that to keep this performance, and bio-based feedstock is only rarely available. This is why we thought, hey, there must be another way. Carbon emissions.
What if there's more than one way to think about carbon emissions? What if they're actually part of the solution? What if, instead of waste, they're a resource? What if we could find ways to turn them into things we see and wear every day? What if someone just needed to take the first step? Clean cloud, made from carbon emissions.
And now we start again with the dream. Because I'm very honest with you, I'm not a material expert. When we started about this, thinking in the team, we started very, very naively. The only thing I knew is every material in the world is made out of carbon atoms. At the moment, we synthesize them from crude oil because we did it since ever. But why don't we take this small little C's, which everyone knows in the chemistry formulas of materials, why don't we take it from a resource we have more than enough, and which is which is basically the problem for our planet. So the dream was basically, let's do a shoe out of air. Very, very, and this was kind of the way we also pitched this to different partners, right? And you can't imagine how many people shake their head, said it's not possible, or okay, on the paper it's possible, but what kind of industry here you try to disrupt, and the processes are maybe there on lab scale, but you can never put them together on big scale. Or what is about the energy? Is it really economical, feasible? So we heard this for years. Nevertheless, in the end, we figured out a partner setup where we made it happen. And we made the world first shoe based on carbon emission. At the moment, I just want to take already the excitement a little bit out, only 5 pairs exist. But I'm coming later to what is happening over the next years. I have one pair with me. So if you want to visit us afterwards at our tent, I can show you the pair. But we always have to protect it, a lot. Over in one of the pairs, over 500,000 investment is in one of these pairs. So basically, when I travel with that and going into a plane, I'm always a little bit nervous. So what do we have? We have a shoe, which we called Cloud Prime, which we launched as a showcase to win attention and make the proof you can make a shoe out of emissions. We have a midsole, which is made as EVA, which is around 55%, 50%, 51% based on carbon emissions. We have other materials in the shoe where we try to use as sustainable resources as possible. Even in the upper, we have 27% emissions. And this is a showcase at the moment. But how do we do it? And I think this is a takeaway for all of us. You will never make it alone. You need the right partners and you need the right setup to achieve a dream. Our process currently is focusing on four steps. Number one, we are capturing the carbon emissions from industrial off-gases with the company LanzaTech, Canadian company, extremely innovative, extremely strong drive, and they ferment the emissions with bacteria and to make ethanol out of it. It's basically like beer brewing. This ethanol is then dehydrated by another partner to win ethylene, right? And before, maybe you remember, I mentioned a midsole in running shoes is made out of ethylene vinyl acetate. And the ethylene part is 80%. So 80% of the EVA we can make with this process out of carbon emissions. And ethylene is then the building block we take together with our partner Borealis, an Austrian, very big Austrian petrochemical company, which has the ambition also to move away from petrol and to become circular, which they said, okay, hey, we block all our labs for you for over 4 months to produce the world first EVA with the ethylene you deliver us from carbon emissions. With these partners together, we are now also working on the next step. Of course, at the very end, we are taking the EVA and we can make a sole out of it. And the most amazing thing is the midsole performance, the material performance itself, is the same like when you make it from petrol. And that's the strongest message. Because I always say, the material doesn't care about where my carbon atoms are coming from. Whether it's coming from emissions, whether it's coming from petrol. In the end, the chemistry is the same. So in this moment, bio doesn't mean worse performance, which we anyway, in this room, everyone knows that. But for the outside world, it's always, when you do something sustainable, you have to compromise performance, and that's not the case. So we reach the same performance. And our goal is to make the majority of our range till end of the decade out of carbon emissions. But I can talk about, and I heard yesterday saying in a very interesting presentation, hey, we shouldn't move away from fossil resources because it just sounds good and it sounds sustainable. It has to be sustainable when we look at the LCA. We have a very strong internal LCA team together with the sustainability teams of LanzaTech, Technip, and Borealis. We are, and I can share this number right now, we are estimating at least a footprint reduction by 50% by switching to this technology. And a 50% reduction for one of the most used materials in the industry is an extremely strong argument for pushing a complete new supply chain. And here then the next and the most challenging part coming into the game, right? I said before, we can't do it alone. Not only On can push a huge industry to change the way how they make chemicals, We need other industries, we need other players within our industry, but also other industries which are using EVA to create the pressure to drive this change. So the partner setup to scale is extremely important. Infrastructure has to be built. Big amount of CapEx investment will be required and is required. Questions like where do you place these kind of manufacturing technologies to enable not only the process itself, but also to combine it with green energy to, in the end, scale this effectively into the market, right? We don't want to make 5 pairs. We want to make millions of pairs out of this with this technology. And we are not just starting, let's call it scale-up discussions, you know, how you might imagine it, that we are sitting around a table and, it would be cool if we could now scale this after having this 5 pairs of shoes. We are in a very concrete timeline with clear milestones. And within the next 5 years, we will present to the world a scaled-up solution for midsoles made out of carbon emissions. In the end, clean cloud, this is how we call this material, because clouds is a technology. You see here, for example, on my feet, this is why I can move around so easily. Combined with the resource out of carbon emissions is a clean cloud. So it's a story to defossilize the industry, and it's only possible if we do this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nils. That's impressive as ever. Are you going to become a midsole company? Is it all about the bio-based or the carbon-based EVA, or is it about the material properties of the whole shoe?
We speak about a carbon emission-based material portfolio. Right? As you saw on the one slide, the EVA is one part. And as I said, we are currently doing the ethylene out of carbon emissions, which leads in the end to 50%, right, of the midsole. The next step is, hey, how can we make the vinyl acetate part of the EVA also out of carbon emissions? Then we have projects with very young startups in the area of making polyester out of carbon emissions. We are already succeeded by making the MEG part, and we will also here coming soon with products on the market already, where the polyester for apparel or footwear contains carbon emissions. So we are building a palette or portfolio of materials with this technology.
And the focus is really more on carbon than on bio-based, or because you showed the castor oil as well?
Yes, they coexist.
Yeah.
So different materials, the castor oil is for us the resource for our most high-performant materials for the athletes. And then the second one for our first fully circular product, the Cloud Neo. This is, in the end, a material which is in a higher price class. It's a very premium material, but for the fastest people in the world. But the technology for the other 95%, we are focusing on clean cloud.
It always seems tricky because people like to say, like Matt said before, to put it in one bucket. So like, oh, you're doing bio-based or you're doing carbon-based, but it can all coexist. Even if you were using recycled polyester from fossil, it can all coexist as long as it makes sense.
So one of our LCA experts once told me that's not one silver bullet. No. It's a combination of things which will make us reach the minus 55%. So there can't be only one component in the strategy.
Yeah, indeed. Give me a show of hands if you have questions for Nils. I'm sure that there will be questions. And we have a mic, this gentleman in the front. And the 50% reduction that you showed from the LCA, that was just on the midsole? Or is that on the complete shoe?
The 50% is on the midsole component.
Yeah. So for the total shoe, it would probably be...
For the total shoe, we have to take in consideration, hey, when we take the recycled polyester and so on, it's much, much more complex. But in the end, what we have to do till 2030 is, in average, to reduce the footprint on our products by 55%.
Yes.
So even on the midsole, we have to tweak a little bit more.
Yeah.
So if someone knows someone who is doing vinyl acetate out of carbon emissions, please pass by our booth.
I think we all know people, but you're asking for
Exactly.
quite specific things. So it'd be interesting to see who comes by to see you. Take a question.
Thank you presentation. I want to ask that basically you need petroleum-based carbon gas. Am I right? And you get the petroleum-based gas for getting ethanol. Think about all industrial system, all fabricators are closed, or they turn into decarbonation system. What would you do to get the ethanol system? What would you do in the future to get the ethanol for source?
That's a very ambitious future where there's no carbon emissions, if I understand your question correctly.
Yeah,
How would you get
I mean,
ethanol?
right, there are other great companies, especially though we are in Switzerland based. In Zurich, there's a young startup which is called Climeworks. They do direct air capture, right? So in the carbon emission capturing, you have two options. You either go capturing at the source. That means industrial off-gases today, and I think we will still have a few years of access to this kind of resources. But direct air capture is getting bigger and bigger, and we have strong contact with them, and we are evaluating what is a better way, taking it directly from the air or at the source. So it could be both.
Thank you. Give us a show of hands. The microphone is in the room. I think what you said was really interesting as well about the time that it takes to make the change. You're already working on the product line that's going to appear in, was it 2 or 3?
In 2026, 27, yeah.
Yeah. So in 2 or 3 years. And the targets that are in place for 2030 and in some of the big companies out there as well, we don't always recognize how long it takes to change things. Even in a personal care product, for example, you don't just swap out one ingredient for another. It takes time to reformulate. It takes you guys a couple of years to bring these innovations to the market.
It is, and then it is even like when we talk on only 3 years, that's fast in the industry. There are other projects, for example, in the circularity area, which need 10 years or more.
Yeah, and that fits with the discussions we were having about investment cycles as well. Can you show me if you have a question for Nils? Yeah, the lady right next to you, Susanna.
Hi. I have a question about what you said of returning the shoes back to the consumer. Because, of course, if in the end the shoes that gets all the carbons from the air gets burned, then that CO2 ends up in the air again. Then, your reduction of CO2 is not as long-term as it might be. So what is your strategy in tackling this circular cradle-to-cradle, let's say, approach?
That's a very important thought, right? We always say, hey, on the one hand, it's about where we get the resources from, but it has nothing to do what happens in the end of life. And this is basically what you're talking about. Our strategy is called Cyclone. This is a program, and what we do so far is, what we launched last year, you do not own a shoe anymore. You subscribe to it. So we have a subscription model where you subscribe to the shoe, you get the shoe, you wear the shoe, and when the shoe is worn out, you do one click, you get a new shoe, and then you send it back with the same packaging. This is where we make sure that people really send it back. So this is one strategy how we at the moment solve how do we get the things back by subscription, because we looked a bit left and right, and to incentivize consumers to send products back is not that easy. Nevertheless, this logistics on the supply chain, on the back loop, to be honest, is not really existing. The industry is currently linear, right? We produce, we buy, we use, we throw away. And now to changing the full fashion industry into a circular model, it will be a huge effort. It will cost money. It will cost innovation on the business level. And we are now together with a community and the customer trying out what happens if you are getting shoes or apparel by subscription. right? How you do it's like you do it on Spotify or Netflix. You pay a monthly fee, and you have access to these products. And with these data, we try to learn and to see what is working, what is not working. Maybe subscription is not the model for the future, but it will definitely bring us one step closer. So we have an own business unit who is thinking exactly about your question, about what's the right model to turn it into a circular solution. And then the next question is, how do we take things apart? We have strong partners here. The upper material could be chemically recycled, the bottom unit, we have several other mechanical recycling solutions. So all of this are nearly project groups in our company to try to solve this. And please feel free to Google Cyclone, where the full process we now have launched to the market, it's explained.
It's super interesting in terms of how you communicate with consumers as well, because you just described, we're used to it being linear. And for many people, we're used to buying a cheap running shoe in a big box store or even in a supermarket. You can buy a pair of trainers or sneakers these days. And so you have this challenge to educate the consumer. How is that going? How responsive have people been to a different business model? Because you said that your company is actually about business innovation, and we need to change behavior.
Very, very responsive. So what we feel is the most questions we get about our product is about sustainability. At the customer service, people, we call them happiness delivery team. We try to deliver happiness and also, of course, answer all these questions about sustainability. But in general, we heard a huge amount of positive feedback about how we are approaching the topic of circularity. And we are focusing especially on consumers now in the Gen Z and Gen Y, so the younger consumers. And here, basically, the main first question is often about sustainability. Especially, we are not only a high-performance brand, but we are also located in a premium price segment. And in this area, people are very conscious about this topic.
Yeah, you have to start there in a way with those consumers that are motivated and that are willing to pay a bit extra for, not just performance, but also the sustainability. When you talk to people about the carbon emissions, I know that's for future products, but it's something that I found quite tricky as a communicator to work around these issues. Carbon, we've painted carbon as the bad guy for so long. How are you addressing that conversation about actually we can take carbon as a resource and we can use it and repurpose it into something useful? How's that going for you?
So this was like long discussions in our communication and marketing team with us together. How can we make clear that basically, and it comes already with the name, right? We start to call it Clean Cloud, and to show that, hey, when we take the problem and turn it into something positive, we have a chance. So basically, it is about, here again, about education, about make it for the customer, for the community, extremely simple to understand what you do, right? Hey, usually emissions go in the air, and they are responsible for climate change and so on. So before this is happening, let's take it and to make something valuable out of it. And I think this is very well understandable for everyone. So very interestingly, a lot of people immediately understood what this project is about.
Yeah, and the more informed consumer might then have questions about what happens to the carbon at the end of life of the shoe? How do you stop it from just escaping back out to the atmosphere? Are you getting that?
We get more the question about where do I see it? Like where are these black little dots, right? Yeah. People think like carbon emissions is like dark smoke, and we capture it and make it into the shoes. And why is the shoe now white?
Yeah, it looks so clean.
These are questions we get much more than I think. Like we as experts, we immediately think nearly too complex. Yeah. But with a customer together, we have to start at the basics.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Nils. Does anybody have a last question? Otherwise, we may release you for coffee. No, thank you so much, Nils. It was fantastic again.